I'm Richo and Jones. A little earlier on tonight, we had an interview with the Prime Minister in his Canberra office. And I've got to say, it's a very interesting interview, really in two parts. One about Peter Greste and the situation in Iraq, and then we move on to domestic matters. But I tell you what, it is very much worth watching. Here it is. And Prime Minister, welcome to the program.
Richo, it's nice to be with you.
No, Neil, thanks for your time. Can I just start by asking you about this dreadful Peter Greste situation in Egypt? Is there anything we can really do? Because I understand both you and Julie Bishop have been to the highest sources in Egypt, as they say.
Well, I've spoken to the acting president a few weeks ago. I spoke to the new president over the weekend. I've put it to both of them that from what I can work out, Peter Greste and his colleagues were simply doing their job. They were reporting on the Muslim Brotherhood, not supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. I think it's also important, Richo, to make it very clear that the Australian government respects the legitimacy of the new government in Egypt. We respect the legitimacy of their judicial process. We understand their concerns about extremism, including the Muslim Brotherhood. But we are dismayed by this decision. We are shocked and surprised by it, and we will continue to make representations at the highest possible level that Peter Greste and his colleagues should go free, because in the end, I think it would be good for Egypt to show that the new government in Egypt is not frightened of free speech and free reporting.
But Ian, really, isn't it true that they're virtually laughing at us? I mean, you say these representations have been made. I see John Kerry has expressed his outrage, but basically this man, on a 3-week mission last December, has been charged with aiding the blacklisted Muslim Brotherhood, spreading false news, having Brotherhood links, and the prosecution wanted 15 years. Now, it's no use us being outraged about it. We've got to be able to demonstrate surely to the family that something active and something persistent and something that's going to have a satisfactory outcome is going to be done. What is that something?
But we've also got to remember that in the end, we are appealing to the benevolence and the good nature of the Egyptian authorities. And if we want to achieve something, as opposed to actually just to be outraged, we've got to act in ways which are likely to get a reasonable response from the government and the people of Egypt.
But no reasons have been given here no reasons at all have been given for the 7 years and the 10 years that the others got. At the end of the day, shouldn't we be making representations, as you say, to the President, telling him it's our understanding that these charges have no validity, that they weren't supported in court by any evidence to validate the charges, and now ask the Egyptian authorities what do they intend to do now? What is the mechanism for appeal?
Well, my understanding, Alan, is that once the legal process is completed, then the President is able to exercise clemency. The President is able to intervene at that stage. And I did form the impression from my discussions with President al-Sisi on the weekend that this is someone that you can have a reasonable discussion with. This is someone who does get it when it comes to the ordinary norms of justice and decency. Certainly, I think he appreciates what Australia is doing to try to ensure that we get a reasonable security situation in the Middle East, given all the terrible and legitimate concerns there are there. So I don't want to do anything which may be understandable and even right and proper according to our norms, but which jeopardises our chances of getting Peter Greste and his colleagues out of jail.
So, can we possibly involve, say, Barack Obama to talk to the Egyptians and the Saudis who actually pay the bills for Egypt? Because we've got to put as much pressure on as we can. Would someone like him be prepared to help, do you think?
Well, we'll be talking to our friends and allies as to what is the best way forward here. But in the end, we want Peter Greste and his colleagues to be free because, as we understand it, they were simply reporting, not supporting an extremist group. So we want them to be free and we need to go forward in ways which maximise their chances of freedom, and gratuitous attacks on the Egyptian government, I don't think actually help. So whatever we might think of the way this particular court has conducted itself, whatever we might think of the way the evidence has been dealt with on this particular occasion, I think we do have to have faith ultimately in the decency and the good sense of people right around the world who surely want to see an outcome which reflects well on the Egyptian people, not badly.
Just find what you say to his mum and dad, who are said to be exploring whatever legal options are available to them, and you know they can't afford to be able to mount any kind of legal challenge. They just feel completely desperate, isolated, and unable to look after their son as they would want to. What do you say to them?
Well, as a parent myself, Alan, obviously my heart goes out to Peter Greste's parents, of course. My heart goes out to them. But again, our responsibility as a government is to do what we reasonably can to get the right result. That's what we've got to get, the right result. And I don't believe that loose language or emotive language at the moment is necessarily going to get us the right result for Peter Greste, for his colleagues, for the ordinary norms of justice and decency and free speech that we support, and ultimately the best outcome for the people and the government of Egypt as well.
Prime Minister, can I turn to Iraq? Because I think that I'm more terrified by what's happening in Iraq. It's been a long, long time. Because when you see those videos of slaughtered civilians and Australians sounding proudly over them, as if they've done something wonderful, it scares the hell out of me. Now, how do we stop these people coming back?
Graham, I share your sense of foreboding about this. This is a dangerous and difficult development. It is a humanitarian catastrophe for the people of northern Iraq. It is a security nightmare for the region and for the wider world. It is, as well, a witch's brew of complexity and difficulty, and no one should assume that there are easy or simple answers to the problems that we now have and will have for quite a long time to come, I fear, because of this terrorist army taking over large sections of Iraq and establishing or seeking to consolidate, a terrorist state in large sections of Iraq. The responsibility of the Australian government is to ensure the safety of our community, and always the safety of our community has got to be our paramount concern. So our determination is, first, to try to ensure that none of these jihadists come back to Australia. Second, if any of them do come back to Australia, to swiftly charge them, prosecute them, and detain them, because obviously people have been radicalised and militarised, people who've been exposed to this gruesome Al-Qaeda offshoot, this worse than Al-Qaeda group, are an absolute menace to the Australian community should they be here.
Aren't there two kinds of these people? One are the dual citizens who use that dual citizenship to go back to Iraq and Syria. Can't you then automatically, as a government, deny them dual citizenship, to take the Australian citizenship away from them immediately? Then you've got the other group who in fact are homegrown jihadists, and it's argued that in Western Sydney up to 150 people from Western Sydney have gone over there. They're Australians, they're born and bred here. Is that a reflection on our overt commitment to quote-unquote multiculturalism? Is it a reflection on our intelligence system that a bloke on a disability pension can get out of this country on his brother's passport, suddenly throw his crutches away when he gets over there and becomes a fighter? And is it a reflection on our justice system that doesn't deal adequately with these people who are here?
Alan, there is certainly a case for cancelling people's passports, and there may well be a case for cancelling some people's citizenship, but I don't want anyone to think that this is solved just by dealing with passports or dealing with citizenship, because the sad truth is that there are quite a number of people born in Australia, legitimately holding Australian passports, who appear to have been radicalised and militarised by their association with this movement. Some indeed may have become radicalised here in Australia. So what we need to do is to take appropriate steps to protect our security, to enhance our intelligence, and I suppose to reach out intelligently and sensitively and compassionately to all elements of the Australian family to try to ensure that no one in this country of ours feels like a second-class citizen purely on the basis of race, of ethnicity, of culture or religion.
But the Prime Minister, I mean, that idealism is beautiful, but nonetheless, there was an Australian jihadist speaking of the summary execution of a fellow Muslim, and he said it lifted the veil of depression for a Muslim living in Australia. This bloke doesn't even appreciate about it. He's depressed about it. Now, you can go out to Auburn and Granville today, as the story's indicated, and you can buy all this gear. You can buy a T-shirt with 2 pistols on the front of it and the words, "Submit to none but one." Or another shirt which reads, "Kill for my brothers." Why should people watching you tonight be tolerant of that behaviour?
Well, Alan, we should not be tolerant of criminal behaviour. We should not be tolerant of sick individuals who are a menace to our community. We should be highly intolerant of criminals. We should be highly intolerant of potential terrorist threats. But what we shouldn't do is conflate the actions of a few sick individuals with a whole community.
But I don't see any protests of these law-abiding, peace-loving Muslim community, apparently the majority of them. Surely they'd be marching in the streets, wouldn't they? Outraged at the bad name they're giving to their Muslim name and their Muslim brothers and sisters. Well, I don't hear any of these voices. Australians don't hear these voices protesting against this behaviour.
And this is a fair point, and I certainly think it would be helpful if there were more senior leaders of the Islamic community in Australia, more senior leaders of religious communities generally, speaking out in favour of the sort of decency and fair-mindedness which has always been a hallmark of our society, and which frankly is why so many people from the 4 corners of the earth want to come here and live here.
And one of the problems, Prime Minister, was when you talk about the Muslim community, there are Shias and there are Sunnis, and that fight's been going on for 1400 years. It's hard to imagine you can call it a community. But look, I wonder if you could just hang on for 1 second, because we'll have to throw to a break. We'll be back in just a moment with the Prime Minister.